Hello everybody, welcome back to the channel. I'm Richard, this is Lap of the World, and today we are continuing what's become kind of an impromptu refresh series on our now 320,000 mile NSX back here. While the car is probably most well known for its on-track antics, the majority of the driving we do is still on the street, and on the street comfort matters. Now the air conditioning in this car has largely worked in our 16 years of ownership, at least since I fixed it initially in 2009, but it has occasionally struggled with static situations. So moving at speed on the highway, air conditioning crisp and cool, stopped in traffic or otherwise standing idle, and it has occasionally struggled to keep up. Now a few years ago I found some wiring issues in line for the passenger side condenser fan. I was able to fix that with some soldering, but well, we had the bumper off recently to do our last video, which was the radiator duct replacement. I tested the driver's side condenser fan, and it's unfortunately dead, as you saw in the intro. The fan spins freely, but putting 12 volts to it does nothing. So we're not going to be able to get away with some clever some clever butt soldering. This time we are going to actually have to replace it. Fortunately, we're going to be able to do that essentially for free, thanks to a tip from our friend Ravi at We Don't Lift Racing. Now this isn't a sponsored video, but they did save us enough money to warrant a shout out. So if you need driver safety gear and live anywhere, look them up online. And if you need a car prepped for track use in the Phoenix area, look them up. But with that said, we will jump right into how we were able to fix our condenser fan situation without ordering a single new part. Getting straight to the NSX life hack, this is the engine room fan. It's a largely vestigial and oft discarded piece of hardware that came on early NSXs. Crucially, it uses the exact same motor as the AC condenser fan. Ours came off the car by request when SOS put the last engine back in, so it was just on a shelf in the garage. Pulling it off the shelf, I checked it for proof of life and with great success moved on to the next step. While both the motor and wire connector are identical, the connector is wired with opposite polarity to the condenser fan's motor, so we need to swap the wires in the connector to ensure the fan will suck air the right direction through the condenser. I used a repurposed dental pick to lever up the retaining tab inside the connector while pulling the spade out the back. Keep track of what goes where so you are in fact swapping positions, and verify on your wiring diagram. Don't just take my word for it. With our replacement motor ready to go, it was on to the hard part, removing the old condenser fan. The fan shroud in this case is integrated into the housing for the condenser, so you have to go in pretty deep here. The front bumper needs to come off, as well as the fender liner, and then we can get to work on the condenser housing. Start by marinating all of the hardware with some penetrating lube a day ahead of time, and then begin with the 4 long bolts holding the front of the condenser housing to the rear housing and fan shroud. Each will require a slightly different technique to remove, given the clearances with surrounding parts. With the bolts removed, unclip the wiring harnesses from the front and then disengage the plastic clips with gentle prying to separate the front half from the rest of the assembly. Next, undo the 2 bolts holding the fan shroud to the mounting bracket. Now that we're done applying torque to bolts and prying on stuff, we can also remove the support bracket itself. It is just 3 small 10mm bolts. You'll want to have something in position to support the condenser core when you remove this bracket to avoid putting stress on the somewhat delicate refrigerant lines. With the core supported, you should now be able to work the fan shroud and housing off of the condenser core. Before we proceed with swapping fan motors and reassembling, this is a great opportunity to backflush your condenser core. I used a pick to straighten the fins as much as possible before blowing compressed air through to dislodge as much built up dirt as I could, and there was a fair bit in our case. Moving on to swapping the fan motors, the fans are both held on by an 8mm nut, with JIS number 2 crosshead screws holding the motors to the shrouds. I marinated everything overnight in penetrating lube before disassembly, hoping for a smooth transaction. The fan came off without much drama. Unfortunately, I can't say the same for the motor screws. They all started to back out, but stripped after unthreading about halfway, resulting in some choice words and a drill session. With the old motor finally liberated and with a quick cleanup and fresh paint on our repurposed replacement, it was time to mount the new motor. It only goes in one way, so that's easy. But be sure not to lose the washer-looking bushing that supports the fan blade over the motor output shaft. The fan keys in place with a D-shaped opening and a flat on the output shaft before tightening things down. Reinstallation is mostly the reverse of disassembly, beginning with putting the fan shroud and housing back around the condenser core, being sure not to force anything, but the fit here should be flush. Don't forget to reinstall the spacers before putting the front half of the housing back on. I clipped it in place and positioned one bolt before reinstalling the support bracket to make things a little easier. Again, be careful to support the condenser and not apply any twisting force to it while remounting it in its bracket. With the bracket back in place and once again supporting the condenser core, it was just a matter of reinstalling the bolts, plugging the fan back in, and then reassembling the bumper and fender liner. So there you have it, a potentially free and potentially more importantly an immediate solution for an ailing condenser fan. I know humidity season is about to set in here, so it's timely for us. And it will also be timely if you procrastinate inevitably on your inspection prior to leaving for NS Expo, which is in Texas this year, hotter climate, so you're going to want your air conditioning tip-top. If you leave that too late and can't wait on parts from Japan, then you might have the replacement on your car already. But the good news is, though, if you have enough of a museum piece NSX that retaining the engine room fan is a desired, then you can still get these motors new. Just the lead time is a question mark. So with that said, hope you found the video informative and not entertaining as always. Thank you all for watching. We will see a bunch of you up at Mideast Meet here in North Carolina at the end of the month. We may see some others of you over at NS Expedition, dates to be announced. I know we're working on it. But with that said, yeah, thanks for watching. I'm Richard. This is Lap of the World. We'll see you guys in the next video, if not the track.